So our first guest speaker is Department of Finance Director Keely Martin Bosler. Ms. Bosler was appointed as a director of California Department of Finance by Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. in August of 2018 and reappointed by Governor Gavin Newsom in December of 2018. She serves as the governor's chief fiscal policy advisor. Prior to her appointment, she served as a cabinet secretary for Governor Brown's cabinet from 2016 to 2018, I believe. Director Bosler previously served as a chief deputy budget for the Department of Finance from 2013 to 2016. Ms. Bosler was a staff director for the California State Senate Budget Fiscal Review Committee from 2010 to 2013. I can go on, but I'm not going to keep our guest waiting. So I'll let Ms. Bosler please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that wonderful introduction as well. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today. Just a week, almost a week after the governor released what is definitely a historic May revision. As you could tell from my introduction, I have been working around the state budget in both the legislature and in the administration for now almost 2 decades, and I've never seen anything quite like this. But I mean, I don't think any of us have experienced the year that we just experienced with the global pandemic, COVID-19. And I have been saying, over the last few weeks, as we've been working through all of the numbers and all of the extraordinary changes that are being made in our budget this year, just how big of a swing it has been from a year ago. And just a reminder, a year ago, we were experiencing what is now, in retrospect, the largest contraction, the largest decline in gross domestic product on record for the United States and for California. And that was the second quarter of 2020. And so when we were putting the budget together a year ago, we really didn't know which direction the pandemic was going to take and how long the closures of our economy were going to last. And that was a very, very uncertain time. And there was a lot of discussion and debate amongst economists and others about what was going to happen, but nobody really had the crystal ball, as they say, about what was going to happen. Come December, when we were putting the governor's January budget, which is normally the main time the governor presents his budget, is in January. Things were looking better, but we were actually things were more hopeful about vaccines coming on. But we had one of the highest infection rates. We had stressed hospitals across the state during those holiday months. It was a very difficult time in December and then early January before we released the budget. We also did not know that the federal government would take such significant action and approve almost $3 trillion in stimulus. That all happened after the governor's budget was finalized. One of the stimulus bills actually got signed right before the governor's budget went to print. But the way our processes work, we have to lock down estimates well in advance of that time period. So while things were much more positive in January in our budget outlook and forecast and resources, they were still somewhat uncertain because we have had a record number of people reliant on the state's unemployment insurance program. And at that time, we did not know that benefits would be extended. And we also didn't have as clear of a focus of how accessible the vaccines were going to be. This spring has been a whirlwind, and now vaccines are readily available, which has been great. And we now have one of the lowest infection rates in the country, in the world. And so things are looking a lot better. We also, one of the things that we found in the pandemic is that the pandemic had a really disproportionate impact on certain populations in our state. And a lot of people in higher wage fields and careers were able to, more or less seamlessly transition to working from home and did not have large interruptions in their revenue and in their household budgets. But many households that are working in lower wage sectors like leisure and hospitality and other employment, they lost their jobs, they lost many hours of work, and obviously there's been a significant devastation in a lot of small businesses, especially around hospitality and the restaurant industry. So there has been a lot of hardship over this last year. The role of government has really changed over this last year, with the federal government stepping in to provide stimulus payments and significant extensions of unemployment insurance, as well as many funds through many other programs, that some of which are coming through state government. So this is a lot of lead in to just kind of explain where we are today with what I would call, again, a historic May revision, one that has nearly $76 billion in resources to allocate, some of that to constitutional required spending, but $38 billion really in a kind of surplus definition. The governor is proposing to put together a plan has put together a plan that not only provides immediate relief to help continue to speed the state's recovery from the pandemic, but he also is using some of these one-time monies to address some of California's long-standing challenges and to provide opportunity for every California family. And that's really important in light of who has been impacted most significantly by the pandemic. And that is a lot of our low-income households, families across the state. And so there are a lot of proposals that are focused around additional supports and opportunities for those families. I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing, and I've had the opportunity, because this administration did not let the pandemic stop all of its thinking about how to become an employer of choice. And I've been participating throughout the year in work groups, talking a lot about how to continue to improve state our work environment for our state employees. This has been a year of tremendous change. I think about it in terms of my department here, the Department of Finance. I think we, as a state, have been quite a bit more historically rigid in terms of the flexibility of working from home and other opportunities for flexible work weeks. And with the pandemic, we were forced to change overnight to a different posture. And that really allowed us to explore different tools and different ways of working. Allowed or forced, we were forced to do it, but then we learned that we could do things differently. And I think that's been it's been challenging, it's been hard, but it has also been a tremendous opportunity for learning about what works and what doesn't work. I think we're still going to be in a process for the next several years as there's more maturity to this pandemic and there's more maturity to our work from home and flexible work environments. But all through this year, the Government Operations Agency, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of it, along with Cal HR, have been working on kind of three different themes of really improving the data and information that we have about our workforce. Data transparency, it's one of those things, if you cannot measure it, you don't really know where you are and what kind of progress you're making. So that has been a really key investment that the state has been making. The other thing is really working to eliminate bias in hiring and promotion, and doing a lot of training and different processes and procedures. And then finally, measuring success. And so again, data and measuring are really to go hand in hand, so that we can actually see what kind of results we're doing and what strategies are working and what strategies are not working. And this is especially, this has been one of the many areas of focus, but one of the important areas of focus has certainly been persons with disabilities. And as I think about how much has changed in the year in terms of how our work environments look, I think about all of the things that we're going to continue have to refine and get better at and work through as we move forward out of this pandemic. I would be happy to talk just about a few of the priorities in the governor's budget. Again, immediate relief is one area, because we recognize that many people over the last year have built up a lot of debts and have had a lot of impacts directly from the pandemic and the economic decline that occurred. And so we are proposing a historic state stimulus that would go to all households up to $75,000, and that would be for $600, with an additional $500 for those households that have dependents. And so that's really a centerpiece of our recovery portion of our budget. We also have additional relief for utility bills. In many cases, people had very tough choices to make in their household budgets, and in some cases, utility bills did not get paid. So we have $2 billion to address both water and electricity utility bills. And then we have another $1.5 billion to add to the $2.5 billion that we provided for small businesses. So these are for grants up to $25,000 to really help keep our small businesses afloat that employ so many Californians. One area I really want to focus on is school spending, and K through 12 schools, just like the rest of us, have gone through tremendous strains and stresses as they also have had to rethink their entire model in order to protect public health in the short term. And they are continuing to adjust, and most schools have brought students back, but this has had a tremendous impact on students and teachers alike. And there's a lot that we need to work through to get our schools back on track. The governor's budget does propose a historic level of funding, state funding for schools. The federal government was also able to provide over $15 billion for our schools as well. And the governor's focus is really going to be on early education. He's proposing the historic expansion of a universal preschool program. This is incredibly important for our future and something that we've talked about for many years. But this has been an opportunity to make that a reality. There's also significant other investments. One other thing I wanted to bring up is obviously all of the research about children and identifying disabilities early and being able to provide supports and programs That all has been impacted by the pandemic as well. And so we have a really exciting proposal in our what we call the Early Start program that allows families to have a longer time to access services and work with professionals to identify any issues that need to be addressed. And so that's a really exciting thing that we've done in this budget to really address the impacts of the pandemic on families, especially families of young children that may have a disability that they want to get treatment and support to address. I'm going to maybe end there because there is so much I could talk about in this budget, but I really want to hear your questions, and I'm just very thankful for this group and your leadership throughout the state in the area of disability and employment. And we have some really exciting expansions on workforce programs, especially including programs for people who are in our developmentally disabled system. We also have a special focus on individuals with autism as well to improve the number of job opportunities for individuals with that disability. But I will end there, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. I'm very grateful that you took the time out of your busy day to present here. And so far, we really like what we have heard. So thank you. And we'll open this up for questions to present. So previously, the governor said he wanted something like 70% or 75% of state workforce to telework. And are there any provision in the May revision to support governor's telework policy? I understand there is some reference to infrastructure, but is there anything there to support telework for the workers? You know, for example, some departments are subsidizing the internet fee and so on. So anything like that, or ergonomic support?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And it's one that I know our Department of Human Resources, CalHR, has been working through and doing a lot of thinking about, because this has been a tremendous change, and our workers have really risen to the occasion and have been flexible and have figured out how to make it work, and that has been wonderful. And so we know that going forward, that there is an interest in having more uniformity across state departments and policies, so that there is guidance for state departments. So I know that CalHR is working with all of our major labor partners to work on those arrangements, and certainly telework is a part of the conversation, because it's such a big part of the conversation about employment and how it's going to go forward. So we definitely have been thoughtful about making sure that we're planning, but I don't have anything, unfortunately, specific to announce today, because that is all being worked out through the collective bargaining process. But certainly it is something that we have been having lots of conversations about, because we are in recognition of the impacts that the changes over the last year have had on individuals and their and we want people to be supported in work. So I think.
Oh,
yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have anything specific, but I do know that I'm very in tune with the issue, and something that we're working on, but there will be more to come in the coming weeks.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you are cognizant of the problem, and you're working on it. So hopefully we'll hear something. My other question.
My own situation when I work at home is not as ergonomic for certain.
Well, for many of us, ergonomic is, an important, essential part that allows us to actually function.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my follow-up question that is, the governor established several task forces to increase equity in state services. One of them was the diversity task force, which included a disability employment subgroup. Mm-hmm. I know that the final recommendation of the diversity task force and the disability task force has been presented to the administration. So my questions are, was any funding included in the May revision to support the recommendation regarding increasing employment of qualified person with disabilities in state service? And second, if not, what is the status of the final recommendation? In other words, has your office, finance, weighed in on them? And when do you think it's going to be made available?
These are very good questions. And I actually recall that there was a meeting last week that unfortunately I wasn't able to attend, but I have been a part of those conversations, as have many of my staff who are very, very dedicated and invested to a strong and diverse workforce, and especially making sure that we have inclusion for all persons, including persons with disabilities. And so I know that we have additional funding for an equity officer at GovOps that will really continue and lead that work going forward. And then really a lot of the recommendations have to do with really integrating this work into the everyday operations of state government. And so that continues to be the crux. Again, the data systems that are consistent across all departments so that we can track centrally and address issues, additional training as well. And those are all things that we've been supporting. But I can't point to one specific thing because it's really about how we are asking all of our state departments to do their work differently. But I think this is all a work in progress, and I'm happy to get back to you with more specifics.
Great, terrific. Thank you so much. So could we follow up with you at some point?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. And I know the gentleman is patiently waiting, and we have quite a few questions in our chat. Yeah. So I will let Mr. Clark go ahead and answer your question, unmute, or ask your question rather.
There we go. I had it unmute. Director Bosler, my name is Dan Clark. I'm with ACSID, which is the Association of California State Employees with Disabilities. Right. We're recognized. I don't know if you recognize us, but we're recognized by CalHR as a bona fide organization to represent disabled employees in state service, and we've been around for a number of years. So anyway, in 2015, a little background. 2015, we participated in what's called the joint projects on employment with persons with disabilities. It was with the Department of Rehab, State Personnel Board, and CalHR. And from that project, we were able to outline a number of issues and that are barriers for people with disabilities and identify some recommendations. And since that time, we've been kind of working on those recommendations, and some of them have been sort of addressed, but not really some of the real meat and potatoes, I should say. So in 2019, AB 365 was passed unanimously by both houses, but only vetoed by the governor when he got to his desk. Now, he said he indicated he supported the goals, and I think that's what led into Bobby Duda's question about the task force. Because subsequently he put together his task force, and then a subcommittee on disability was there, and we were able through that process to submit some of the major issues that we had concerns with. But concurrently on the side, we worked on AB 365, as I stated earlier, to work on some of these recommendations. They were pretty much included in 365, got passed, and then the governor said he vetoed it, but he said he could do it administratively. And maybe that's the result of the conversations you're having, which is nice to hear. But again, we weren't sure where things are going. So currently we're co-sponsoring with the Disability Rights California AB 313, which has some of the same similar provisions. So, and right now it's in suspense. So I guess my question to you is, can you tell us if finance has any specific concerns about 313, AB 313, if you know anything? Because ACSED and DRC are very open right now to negotiate, have discussions, to see where the issues are, to try to get this thing passed. We wouldn't like to see it vetoed because, again, it has some provisions that keep on, if they're addressed, will alleviate issues we're seeing out there with people with disabilities in state service.
Ms. Bosler, you're muted.
And I can't tell you today because I haven't had a chance myself. I know that one of my staff is reviewing that piece of legislation, but I haven't had a chance to review that myself. So I'm going to have to get back to you, but I'm happy to do that. And I should be able to give you a more comprehensive view on because I know many of the recommendations that have been discussed over many years have been things that have been discussed during the task force. And so I just want to make sure I'm accurate and giving you the correct information. So I'll need to get back to you on that. But thank you, Dan. I've written your name down. And Bobby, I assume I can get a hold of Dan through you.
Absolutely. Okay. I'd be happy to pass it along.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that comprehensive question.
I want a little sort of follow-up. If you have anybody there you'd like us to talk to help process, when you get back with us, let us know. And we'll be glad to.
I will absolutely connect you with my team that has that piece of legislation and we can talk through some issues there. So
great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have J.L. Gutierrez asking, when does the early school program funding take effect?
Yeah.
And can you please repeat the income amount for the historical release?
Yes. So for the early school, so that's transitional kindergarten. So it's really a 14th year of public school. We'll be phasing that in starting next year in 22-23. And there'll be 3 months of children a year added. And this is all if approved by the legislature. So we've only just made a proposal to the legislature at this point. But that's really exciting. Right now, transitional kindergarten is just offered for 4-year-olds or children who turn 5 between September and December. But now it will be for all children regardless of the month. So all 4-year-olds regardless of the month that they're born. So that's really exciting and important on a number of different fronts. In terms of the relief, it is a $600 stimulus or tax rebate, and it is going to households that have adjusted gross income less than $75,000. We estimate that between the first stimulus that was already approved earlier this year that went to households making $30,000 and less, that we will actually reach 2/3 of the state's population, which is pretty phenomenal.
Okay, and then I have another question. I'm going to ask the questions from Dev and then throw it over to Alan. He's going to ask you verbally. Dev asks, can you tell us more about the workforce programs with the focus on including people with disabilities? Would this include revamp of reasonable accommodations? We have issues where folks are getting the accommodation while on LEAP, but once they're out of the LEAP program, the accommodation is taken away. And they are held to their job duties in the duty statement, i.e. lifting 20 pounds or more without a cart. This is the case in the custodial services. That's one question from Deb. The other one is, how can we contact the disability equity offers at GovOp? So those are the two questions for Deb for you.
So I know that the one proposal that is specifically, it's a joint proposal between the Department of Developmental Services and the Department of Rehabilitation, is really about establishing a training and certification program. And I actually heard the directors present to the legislature this weekend, and I was actually even more excited about the proposal than when we approved it over here at the Department of Finance. So it's really about really expanding opportunities for employment across the board for individuals with disabilities, and really thinking differently about how to recruit and retain employers to be a part, to understand and to be able to take these opportunities. So it's a comprehensive proposal, and that is something. There is also another specific proposal at the Workforce Development Board that is specific around individuals with autism, and that is also another focus in the budget. There are many workforce programs in this budget. Obviously, the state has just recovered only 44% of the jobs that were lost in March and April of last year. So there's going to be a lot of need for training, because sometimes, in some cases, jobs are not coming back the way they were eliminated. And so thinking about how we make sure that people have opportunities for training and other types of programs. And I'm sorry, I don't have an answer on the reasonable accommodation. I'm just not that familiar with exactly what you are talking about here, but I'm happy to get back to you on that as well.
So you can always send us information to Bobby, and we can forward it to the whole team. We do that to answer questions, to give time. Okay, so then also we have Alan Goldstein. Alan, do you want to unmute and ask your questions?
Yes. Hi, Director Bosler. I'm an attorney with SEIU Local 1000, so that's my perspective. I just want to say first, I really appreciated your comments. I'm going to be really embarrassed when they read my bio after hearing yours.
Oh, God.
No. And I appreciate you, acknowledging the state has been, and I wrote this down, historically rigid in terms of flexible workplace issues. I think the last year has been a learning experience for all of us. For 20 years, I've been preaching telework, and I feel like I owe the world an "I told you so" somewhere. But I'm just so glad you're appreciating what we've all learned the past year.
It's been incredible to watch my department. We have these very, very, steep peak work seasons where, people are working really around the clock. And we were a lot of us that grew up working in state service, and we've grown up working a certain way, at our desks in the office. I think I got worried several times throughout the year, but we were able to produce our products and get our work done. And, I see the ingenuity and the flexibility, especially, of a lot of our workers that, are more flexible than me, maybe. But I think it's been tremendous to see how people could rise to the occasion and still be able to turn out the work products and the service to the state, which is what our job is.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I actually had two different questions. One, I was wondering if there's any planned expansion of the LEAP program. I've done some PRA requests, and in my opinion, the LEAP program is way too narrow. I don't quite understand why every state position can't have LEAP candidates. I've supervised lawyers with what's called Asperger's, or with who are blind deaf, deaf-blind. I just feel like every state position should be able to have LEAP candidates. I think that's a great entryway for people with disabilities into the workforce. I saw the comment about the accommodations. They should definitely continue after the program ends, but I would love to see an expansion of that program. I was wondering if there's anything planned? And then I have a second question regarding school issues.
I do not know the answer to your question, Alan, on LEAD. I remind me this is a program. I am blanking.
Yeah, LEAP, LEAP, limited examination. I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I will need to get back to you because I do not have that specific information. But but it sounds like I know that there's still a lot of focus on upward mobility programs. I know we're doing that here at the Department of Finance, giving people opportunities to train into different positions and classifications. But I do not have the specific information on LEAP. It's LEAP.
LEAP, yes. And part of my goal is to put these things on maybe your radar screen.
Yeah, no, I'm curious. You have piqued my interest.
And I gave some comments to the State Personnel Board about a year ago. I'd be happy to share those with you. And my second question, I so appreciate you talking about early education and detection of students with disabilities. It's so key. In Illinois, I handled a lawsuit to have the state high schools have integrated sporting opportunities for high school students with disabilities at all meets across the state championships.
Wow.
When I came to California, I worked at Disability Rights California and spoke with the California Interscholastic Federation about the same issue, because California does not have statewide integrated sporting high school opportunities. Right. And I learned it's really school district by school district. And I would just love to see a more comprehensive program. For me, high school wasn't about, math or history. It was about being on the track team and playing basketball. So I feel like students with disabilities should have those same opportunities for sports and integrated opportunities. And I'd love to see the state, about half of the country actually has various programs like that, but California isn't one of them.
Oh, interesting.
So, and I have a lot of data on that. So I'm happy to share that too, but I think that would be something great.
Thank you, Alan. And I, in the brevity of time, I wasn't able to highlight all of the aspects of the governor's budget with relation to schools. And one of the big investment areas is exactly those enrichment, like you just said. School wasn't for you about the math and English classes, but it was about all of the other activities that you were able to participate in. And so we do have significant money that's $1 billion growing to $5 billion over the next several years that we want to go to low-income schools, schools that serve low-income families around the state primarily, and really provide all of those after-school programs, extended day, extended year into the summer, arts, sports, music. And I definitely, I think your point about making certain that there's opportunities for all students are really important as well. So I will take that back.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. First of all, before I get into my next question, I did want to let everyone know that Glena Wheeler from the chief officer of civil rights at CalHR. She's in the comments, and she's saying that I'm responsible for statewide guidance on reasonable accommodation and also responsible for the statewide LEAP program. So if anybody has additional questions, we have someone in the comments that actually can answer those questions about those two programs specifically and has pointed that out. So then I have one more question. So will state employees be expected to return to the office after June 15th, or will the telework continue until the union and CalHR work out the details? That was Mindy's question. Keely, do you have any information about that?
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable because it's really more of a CalHR. I mean, we support them in their work with in collective bargaining, but I don't have we're making plans. I know as a department director, we're making plans for what the future of our telework program is, but I think that I defer to CalHR in terms of statewide guidance.
I completely understand that. Okay, Keely, I'm going to ask my question that I've been holding on to. Okay. If anybody else has If anybody else has some questions, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the comments, and I will follow up next. But as someone who's a part of my DAC at my local agency and a person with a disability, I know that in our community, there's a lot of concern about the fact that persons with disabilities who are working are like, we don't get a lot of attention. If you're a person with disability, you're not working, you get attention. The concern I've been having is that I'm hearing that with COVID, there's a lot of people who are ending up with a post-viral condition that it's not just not just an event where people are dying or where people are getting sick. It's also a mass disabling event, effectively. And I know I don't hear that so far. We've talked specifically about COVID in the budget, but just as a question to you, have you heard anything discussed about like the fact that there may be more persons with a disability out there after this event?
It is something that we have had conversations about, it's amazing to me when I was sitting at the State Operations Center a year ago, how little we knew about the virus and how it was going to impact people and how even it was transmitted, and how much we have learned in this year. Oh, yeah. And I think we are continuing to learn more. And I know we have many very expert public health individuals and doctors across the Health and Human Services Agency. And we will continue to learn more and how that impacts our programs that support long-term disability, workers' compensation issues. But I know that is one thing that I have certainly read some about and have heard discussed in the course of my work here. But I don't want us to pretend like we know all of the answers right now. We don't. But
understandable.
It's certainly something that we will be what will be one of the many things that we will be continuing to work on as we get the pandemic more in the rearview mirror. But the impacts are certainly going to be lasting in many areas and for many people. And so I do want to recognize that your question is a very good one, and it should be something that we are. It is something we are thinking about and working towards, but we don't have all the answers today.
It heartens me to hear that at least the topic has come up, that this may end up with more people who need help. And as someone who cares about the persons with a disability that are trying to work, that I'm always hopeful that we'll get a little bit more attention out of to help us try to make this happen.
One of the other really big things, and this is a little bit of a segue, but it shows, I think, the recognition that the governor has, and our Health and Human Services Agency secretary as well has been a huge champion. We have a very large and comprehensive behavioral health proposal, mental health proposal for students and young people. So 0 to 25 is the focus, because we really, I think, are really trying to make sure that we don't have, generational impacts of this past year.
Absolutely.
On especially our young people. But we've all gone through the fire, if you will, this last year with our own personal struggles and challenges. And so I think important that we keep working on these issues and issue spot, because the amount of shock and change that has happened over the last year is really once in a lifetime, we hope. So
thank you so much for your answer. And do we have anybody else that would like to ask a question? I don't have any more questions in the comments. You can raise your hand or feel free to unmute really quickly. Give it a second.
This is Bobby. I just have one quick comment. You brought up the mental health proposal. I'm really happy to hear that. May is the Mental Health Awareness Month. So I want everyone to be aware of that. So we are celebrating that in light of, how far we have come. So it's heartening for me to hear that there is some serious proposal on the table. My question to you is the comment you made earlier during your presentation data transparency and eliminating bias in hiring. What exactly is the proposal to address data transparency, and particular interest to us in our community is eliminating bias in hiring? In other words, is there any specific plan to address two issues that you brought up?
Yes, there is. There is a whole matrix of problem statements and then recommendations and proposed timeline. And this is something that many working groups have been working on over the last year. And there are different strategies in different employee groups, because obviously there are different challenges in different employee groups. But we do have a multi-pronged plan, and I am just one of the people that have been had an opportunity to input into it, but I'm not the leader, and so I actually may want to defer to Jenna or others from CalHR that could go into the specifics about where we are. I know that the Chief Equity Officer that we are proposing to create at the Government Operations Agency is going to be a primary in making sure that this agenda of work continues to move forward. A lot of it is we have the tools in place, and it's now about really collecting and then holding accountable and moving policies and procedures across the state forward in order to get the continual improvement that we all want to see in this area.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And looks
sorry,
like
I can't be more specific on that.
No, that's totally fine. We have Glenna Wheeler to refer these questions to, so I'm sure I'll invite Miss Wheeler to present at STEC. Hopefully, she'll join us next. I don't have any questions. I see that there is a hand raised somewhere. Do you have a new question, Dan Clark?
Yeah. No, I just wanted. This is Dan Clark again from ACCET. I just wanted to add to a couple of comments. Some of the recommendations I was referring to that we sent to the task force, as well as incorporated in those bills, are what we're addressing some of the LEAP issues, that the questions that came up, as well as the RA. The RA policy is something that we've been looking at for a while, and I think there's something in play, and I'd like to see that implemented. So
yes,
I just
got my note on that. Yes. Yeah.
And going back to the LEAP, a model that's similar to what Alan was talking about is in the federal government. They have a program called Schedule A. It's somewhat similar, where a person with a disability, if qualified, the disability can apply for a position very similar to how LEAP works, but it's every position. It's not selected to 5 or 6 different classifications. Instead, in the federal government, it's any position. So there are there's other models to look at if you want to look at. So
great, thank you.
Yeah.
So Bobby, it looks like we're wrapping up with the questions. I'm going to throw it back to you, Keely. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
No, I appreciate having the opportunity to be with you all this morning, and look forward to continuing to do great work for the state. And I think your guidance and through this major time of change is going to be even more important. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Your presentation's been extremely helpful and informative. Our SDAC members truly appreciate the knowledge that you imparted to us. So thank you very much. We'll follow up with your office with the questions.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, and come back and see us soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you for your time. Yes. Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.